Welcome to Indian Tennis Daily, Karan, and thanks for taking time to talk to us.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. I've watched a couple of your past interviews, so excited to be here.
Okay, so you follow Indian Tennis Daily?
Yeah, of course I do. I mean, I'm still in touch with a lot of the Indian players as well, so and it's nice to see what they've been for many years now. They've been easy way to keep track of what everyone's doing. So it's nice to have a platform where you can actually go to for all the Indian tennis information.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. It's a bunch of volunteers. They're like 50 odd spread across the world,
Oh wow,
and
that's I
everybody
didn't
is
know that.
working. I mean, they take time off to do all this thing. They try to help every Indian playing anywhere in the world.
Oh wow,
It's a huge
that's actually
effort
really
of
good. I mean, it's
pure volunteers and good tennis fans. Like,
yeah,
we call
no,
tennis fans. These are the
yeah.
tennis fans.
I guess you have to be a tennis fan to do something like this, right?
Yeah, true.
I wish it was there when I was playing as well. It was really nice.
Very true. Yeah. So now, what's your situation there? I mean, you've been, I think from February, January, February, you had restrictions and all this.
So I was actually in the States. So January, Hong Kong, we had the two tournaments in Hong Kong, beginning of Jan, futures. And then end of Jan, I went to the States with one of my players to play tournaments there. And then we got back around mid-Feb, end of Feb. And the player I was with was scheduled to play some tournaments while she was in the States. But then I think first week of March or second week of March, all tournaments got cancelled
Yeah.
on the
So,
ATP, WTA, everywhere. So then she had to fly back
okay.
to Hong Kong. So I was back around Feb. I went to India for a couple of weeks when
Okay.
things got a little bad here.
Okay.
So I was in Bombay with my family and everything, and then I came back around 1st of March. And my family stayed there, and then unfortunately they're still there. So
So
we're trying to see.
enjoying your bachelor life, you mean?
Yeah, it was good. It was good for a week or two, but after that, started missing the
Yeah.
family a little bit.
And also, there's no sign of when you can, you can fly or they can fly in. So that's a
Yeah,
little uncomfortable.
yeah. So that's the problem now. We have no idea when they can come back. So we'll see.
Yeah, Karan, you came into coaching pretty early, like me. I mean, I also came into coaching very early. So from playing to coaching, what was your biggest challenge? From as a player to a coach, what was your biggest challenge to start with? Okay, now you're 8 years, 9 years into
Sure,
it,
sure.
so more familiar. But initial
Yeah.
stages.
I think initially it was more maybe just learning how to coach a little bit because maybe I did have a bit of knowledge because I already played quite a bit. But initially, I think I wasn't maybe sure how to convey or communicate
Mm.
with players, how to maybe when to say something, when not to say things, these kind of things, you know what I mean? So that was probably initially maybe it took me a while because I spent about 6-7 months coaching in Bombay itself
Yeah,
with a bunch of different players. I helped Purav a little bit while he was there too. But it was more just getting a bit of experience. The first thing I think I really focused on was trying to get some coaching certifications done.
yeah,
Because as a player, I never really got any of that done. So I went
yeah,
and did the GPTCA course in Bangkok. I was in touch with a lot of the guys, Dirk Hordoff, Alberto Castellani, all those guys. So it was nice to learn from them and pick their brains a little bit because they've been in this field for so many
yeah.
years.
True.
Obviously, my coach as well from Australia, who I worked with a bit, I tried to get some information from him as much as I could. So it was just basically learning, learning how to convey my messages to different players and how to work with different kinds of players because as you know everybody is a little different. You can't
Yeah.
have the same kind of approach to everybody, so just the finer nuances, I guess. Learning that was probably my biggest challenge.
Yeah. And since you did 6 months in India, then you started in Hong Kong. Did you find difference working with the Hong Kong kids compared to the Indian kids? Indian kids will be
um
more familiar, you know what to expect, right?
right. So with the Indian kids, I mean the biggest difference maybe initially was the most of the Indian players knew who I was.
Oh, okay.
They'd already followed my
Mm.
tennis career a little bit, so they knew that okay, I played for India and all that. Whereas when I came to Hong Kong, it was completely new. Maybe they went online to maybe Google me or see anything what I'd done previously, but It like in working with anybody new, it took me a while to gain their trust. But hopefully, I mean, thankfully, I guess eventually I did. But that was the biggest challenge moving here. And then eventually,
I
of
know.
course, I got comfortable here.
Yeah, I know kids actually. I mean, you have definitely gained their trust because I met one of your trainees called Sydney. She's an
Okay.
Austrian.
Oh, you met Sydney. Oh, yeah.
Last year, actually, I mean, I worked few sessions also with her because she plays with
Okay.
my friend. So I go there.
Okay.
So I know about you
Right.
from Sydney. In
Yeah.
fact, she had
She's
an
in Austria.
interesting thing to say. She said you are always nicer to the girls compared to the boys.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with the boys, I was a little tougher because the boys could
Yeah.
probably handle it a little more. But yeah, no, she was because I worked with her for about a year when I was working with the under 12s in
Yeah.
Hong
Okay.
Kong, and she was actually very talented
Yeah.
and very
Right.
very
No, she's
hardworking
doing well.
girl.
I think she'll do well. She's playing on clay
Yeah,
already, and she's competing well. I saw her
yeah,
2 years in a row. She's improving. Her brother
yeah.
is also picking up. He's
Yeah,
also
because her
doing
dad still stays in touch with me sometimes, sends me a
well.
couple
Okay.
pictures of what she's
Okay.
doing and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's
So yeah,
nice.
I remember she was
Yeah.
definitely one of the girls who I felt could really do something if she worked hard, you know. So it's nice to know that you met her as well.
Yeah, and she has a lot of regard for you. I mean, that's why when you mentioned, I hope you get. When you mentioned hope, I said, no, definitely they have,
Right. Yeah, no,
they have a lot of
that's good.
appreciation for your work. So moving on, Karan, it, actually something which struck me. You played Nadal's and Monfils and Murray and everybody in the 14s, right? I mean,
Right.
and then now you see them still doing well in top 10 up in the world. So when you look back right now, do you feel that wish I could have played? I mean, I
Of
thought,
course. Of course. At the end of the day, you always want to be at the highest level. You know, every tennis player's dream growing up is to be in the top 100, play the Grand Slams. Maybe if top 50, whatever. So when I see all these guys, they were literally my contemporaries, almost the same age. We
yeah,
played together the under 14s, the under 18s, juniors. I was probably ranked higher than some of them. So sometimes you do feel, but at the end of the day, there's no regrets. You can't live like that.
yeah.
I've now got my own life here. I'm happy with what I'm doing. Have a great family. So these are the things that you cherish more than that. But yes, of course, there's a little part of me that wish that I could have done a little bit more than I did. But some things you can control, some things you can't.
Yeah.
I
But I,
believe
I
I did
think
everything. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I think you did the best you can, and sometimes you got to
exactly.
be a bit lucky here and there to
Yeah, exactly. I keep telling like my friends that I wish I had the knowledge now. I wish I had this knowledge then when I was actually
then.
growing up and younger. But hindsight is a funny thing. So
Yeah.
you can't look
True.
back.
In fact, I mean, I got a message from Sanya, and she feels you are one of the most talented kids. She has
Right.
known, and you're still good friends. And
Yeah.
she's got she's in awe of your backhand.
Right. Yeah. That
I
was
think you all traveled when you were like under 14, the ITF team, 6 weeks in Europe.
Yes.
And
I
since
think
then, you've been
my first tournament outside India was with her and Tushar
the
and
trip.
Divij. We went to Pakistan to play an under 14 Asian event. So that was the first time I actually went abroad, and then obviously later in the year we went to Europe for 5-6 weeks. So yeah, we've traveled together a lot. So it's great to see how well she's done as well. It's all these people you grow up with, now you see them doing well. It's a good feeling.
So now you meet them at tournaments. You are a coach and they're a player. So you are a
Yeah,
senior to them.
exactly. It's a funny story because I think I moved to Hong Kong maybe a year or two, and I was the Fed Cup coach. And we played Kazakhstan. We played India in Kazakhstan, and Sanya was in the team. So jokingly, obviously, I was for Hong Kong. We were playing against India. They're calling me traitor and this and that. So it's all in good fun.
Yeah. Now we go back to younger days. I think you started playing when you were like 3+4, and
Yeah,
track tennis, and I think Ramarao helped you a lot. And
yeah.
Manoj was telling me a story. He said you were like 4 years old and you could still hit like 300 balls over the net, and you are like shorter than the net.
Right. I have a picture. I think my dad has a picture of me standing next to the net when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and my head would barely cross the net. So I started early, and that's the story that my dad tells me as well. That I started hitting balls, and I could always put the ball in the court or hit a clean contact. So I guess I had a decent hand-eye coordination. I could make contact on the ball. So that's where I guess I started and enjoyed my tennis a little more.
You remember anything like like those days for practicing at track tennis and how Ramarao has contributed, Manoj has contributed in those days?
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, I remember in practice tennis, I started actually my first. Initially, I started at Bhushan Tennis Academy.
Okay,
I think that's where I first started, and then I remember. I don't remember. This is what my parents have told me. But with my school, they used to have a Saturday morning practice at practice tennis as a school camp or something. And
okay.
so I would join that, and that's when I first met, I guess, Ramarao sir and Manoj sir and all those guys. And the next day, I came back to my parents saying, "I want to go back to practice tennis." Because I enjoyed the training there, I enjoyed the coaching there. It was a lot more fun for me. So then that's how then we moved to practice tennis, and that's how it started. And I remember back in the day, we had a massive. There were so many players at practice tennis. We
Yeah,
had a
correct.
very big group, and I was always
Yes.
the youngest. I think all the other players were older than me, and luckily I got to practice with all of them. So that helped me immensely to play with the older guys so much. So, but it was a fantastic group, and I remember even Neelu sir, there was another
Mm.
coach. I think
Yeah,
he was there as well. So all three of them together, they helped me a lot, and I think credit to them. Whatever I did till I was about 14, 15, um, you know, till I think maybe 1 year I went to bat, yeah. But then till then, they really helped me a lot.
yeah. It's actually, I mean, nice of you to give your earlier coaches all the
Sure.
credit even today.
Yeah, no, no, of
You are a
course.
nice guy.
No, no,
So,
no. It's yeah. It's always the people who lay the foundation. I think they're the ones who don't get the credit.
yeah.
It's always the big coaches who get the
Yeah,
credit.
exactly. No, that's why yeah, that's why I mentioned it because it's not often that the people who worked with you in your younger later get credit or get
Yeah,
recognized for their contribution because they have
yeah.
also contributed, which
Oh,
people don't
absolutely,
get to hear about.
absolutely. They
And
made a
yeah,
massive mark.
talking about the foundation from coaches. I mean, you cannot forget the support from home, your parents. So,
Yeah, yeah. think
I mean, they must have gone through, they must have really taken time to, help you travel and take you
Oh
for
yeah,
practice.
absolutely. I mean, now I'm a father, so I can actually
Yeah,
relate to what they did.
that's what.
I mean, there were my mom when I was young. My mom would travel with me to all these little
Yeah,
pockets of Maharashtra and India, like how the tennis circuit is in India. We would go to Sangli and Nagpur and Nasik, all these places, play these tournaments, and yeah, they sacrificed a lot. I mean, I remember them waking up with me at 5 a.m., taking me to practice in the morning. Then I would get changed there, then go to school. Then on the way after school, I would change in the auto, have like something to eat, and then go to tennis again. Like finish at 7. So it was a full day thing, and my parents were, they were
with
right
you.
with me throughout. The sacrifices I think they've made, it's you can't put it in words. They've
If you
definitely
have to do
done
it
a lot.
now, you know how difficult it is.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I tell my wife that if I had to do the same thing for my daughter, I don't know how I would do it.
Yeah,
It was very hard, but
very
you
true.
know, it's all credit to them.
Yeah. And at what age did you really begin to recognize the financial challenges involved in playing tennis? I mean, your parents
Um,
should have known earlier.
yeah, exactly. My parents probably knew a lot before me. I
Yeah.
guess I started to realize it maybe. I think once I started playing ITFs a little bit, started traveling abroad. I remember I was 14 and I went to the IMG Academy for the first time. And I remember was a conversation that maybe I heard between my parents or between my mom and my granddad, because it was an expensive trip. Going to the US at that time, spending 2 weeks there, even though my dad had to come with me, I couldn't go by myself. So when they were talking about the expenses and how it's going to cost them a lot. So that's probably when it first hit me that if I want to continue playing, it's not going to be cheap. But my parents never let me, realize it or never let me think about it. They always told me that we'll support you no matter what. Don't worry about the money part. We're right behind you, and you just play. So
Right.
not many parents are,
Yeah,
especially in India,
correct.
don't do that. So for
Exactly.
me,
A
that was,
phenomenal support. I mean, the phenomenal words actually. Hearing
yeah,
it from the parents for the child at that point
right.
of time, I mean, completely takes the pressure off. I
Yeah,
mean, you can just,
exactly. So I could just go play, and thankfully I had a good junior career, even without sponsors or anything like that. But complete credit to my parents for never letting me feel that kind of pressure.
absolutely. I mean, I think they've made a huge contribution right there at the start.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Before even you got into serious, no, you knew what tennis was, they already
Right.
have contributed in a huge
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just
fashion.
yeah, and like I said, in India, it's not common.
Correct. And you're talking about junior career. I mean, like the under 14 World Junior Tennis, you played Nadal and Murray and and people like that, right? I think Novak also. At
Right.
that point of time, did you feel that those guys were so good when you
Yeah,
played them?
yeah. So there were a couple instances. I mean, I remember I played Andy Murray in the European tour, the 5-week tour that I went,
The ITF.
and yeah, the ITF team with the ITF team, and we were playing a tournament in Holland, and I was actually 6-3, 5-1 up, and I lost the match from there against him.
Wow.
And yeah, and his coach actually came up to me after. I think Nandan Sir was traveling with us on that trip. Nandan Sir was there. And I remember Andy's coach came up to me and Nandan was saying, your player, you played much better, but Andy just competed a little better than you. I still remember those words. So you look at Andy Murray now, he's an amazing competitor. So he had it since a very young age. And with Nadal as well, the under 14 World Junior Finals, we were playing Spain, and we had no idea, honestly. It was Tushar, Divij, and me, and we had no idea how good they were or who they were, anything. And the number one there was obviously Nadal, so I had to play him, and on clay in Europe. I mean, it was. I still
It's a good
remember the
lesson.
match. It was pretty embarrassing. Lost 6-2, 6-2, or something like that. And then from the other players, you started hearing about these guys. Then you heard, okay, this guy is already being touted
Somebody.
as somebody special. So, there was already a bit of a buzz around those guys. So I didn't feel so bad losing them.
And as you were saying, talking about Nadal, Rohan just signed in and said hi. You remember any incidents or interesting Davis Cup experiences with Rohan? Did he rag you when you first went and joined the team?
well, there's a couple of stories. My first, actually, I was lucky because my first tie, Rowan wasn't in the team yet. I think he was injured at the time. So usually the initiation happens on the first tie. And my first tie was New Zealand, where it was Harsh, Leander, Mahesh. So Leander, Mahesh, and Leander's dad, Dr. Pace, took over my initiation a little bit.
Oh,
So
yeah, he's good
that
at it.
time,
Yeah.
Rohan, yeah, but Rohan was always nice. I mean, it was always great fun to be with Rohan. He's a funny guy, very helpful. It was very, very nice to be around.
I mean, you must have heard about the new initiative Rohan has
Yes.
come up with, right? Yeah. Rohan
Yeah,
is
yeah,
trying
of
to.
course. It's yeah, yeah. Hopefully it really influences a lot more people. I mean, obviously with you involved as well, I'm sure it'll be a success. So all the best to
Thank
you
you.
guys, and I really hope it does well.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you're talking about your first trip. I mean, first Davis Cup. Your selection into your Davis Cup. That was, I think, 2004, just after your great run in Australian Open
Yeah.
Juniors, right? That can you, talk about those matches? I'm sure you remember. Playing. I think you beat Fognini in quarters, and then you went on to play Monkfields in semis. So, can you those matches? I'm sure it's very clear in your mind.
Yeah, yeah, I remember. My little details of that man of that tournament. I remember it was an interesting story because when the draw was made, um, I was actually supposed to play Djokovic in the first round, and then I think they realized they made a mistake in the draw, so they had to change the draw.
Okay.
And Djokovic ended up making the semis from his half, and I made the semis from my half. So luckily they changed the draw. Otherwise, maybe I would have lost the first round to Djokovic. But so I remember that initially at the start of the tournament, and was another very, very important story in that tournament. I played the third round against a Taiwanese guy, Yi Chu Han, who's lefty, who's really good doubles player as well. And I think I won the first set 6-1. Second set was 6-5 or something like that. And, 30-15, very close, very close. And it started raining. So we had to go back into the locker room. And the last 5 minutes of that match, before it started raining, Leander was actually watching those last couple games. Because he was obviously there and he maybe heard that, okay, there's an Indian junior playing. And he came and watched. And then after the rain delay, he just came to me and spoke to me for a couple minutes. Said, you're playing really well. Just stay calm. And, I believe in you. And just very, very positive and, gave me a little bit of confidence. And then after the rain delay, I came back and ended up winning, maybe lost 1 point in the next 7 or 8 and ended up winning pretty easily. So that one moment stands with me a little bit, that just a little bit of encouragement from somebody like Leander Pace can make such a big difference for a junior like that,
Yeah, so much inspiration, right, at that stage.
Yeah, and he didn't have to do it. He could have just quietly just walked off. But he came up to me and spoke to me, and it was a very, very, I still remember that one moment till now.
I think the same tournament, your semis also is pretty, interesting, right? You lost your way to the Margaret Court Arena.
Yeah. That was.
I agree with you. It's not easy. I mean, you go into the tunnel, you don't know where you're going.
Yeah, I almost got defaulted. So it was because I had actually hurt my hamstring the week before in the grade 1. So I was getting treatment before every match. So it was sort of like a ritual. The physio would, massage me, take me up, whatever. It was before every match. Now on the day of the semis, it rained. So the schedule went all over the place. And we had to try to warm up indoors, and the timings were different, and everything was just all over the place. So at the Australian Open, the indoor courts are separate. The junior locker room is somewhere else. The Margaret Court Arena is somewhere else. So you had to find your way through all these places. So I warmed up, and then I said, okay, I'm just going to go straight to the match. And then I didn't think about, I need to get my hamstring taped or all these kind of things. So I rushed back to the junior locker room, got the little massage, got taped, and then on the way back, I took a wrong turn somewhere, going to the Margaret Court Arena, and I got lost, honestly. And it was, I think the match starting at 11 o'clock, and it was like 11:10, and I still hadn't reached the court, and 11:15, they would have defaulted me. So imagine that, you're playing semis of the Australian Open, and, you get defaulted because you can't get to the court in time. So I somehow ran and then managed to make it there, maybe 1 or 2 minutes just in time. So I got pretty lucky.
And the same tournament, I think, the way you got to know that you're part of the Davis Cup team is also an interesting story, right?
Yeah. That's another one of those moments that stick with you for the rest of your life, So again, after the semis, so I lost the semis. Obviously, I was a little disappointed, but still sort of, pleased that I'd made the semis and everything. And after the match, my dad was there with me during the whole time. So my dad's like, let's go. Leander wants, and he was the Davis Cup captain at the time, Leander. So he's like, Leander wants to talk to you a little bit, and let's go to the Players Cafe. So I was like, great, I was super excited. So we go into the Seniors Cafe, got to make a special pass because juniors couldn't get in. So we went in, we're sitting and having lunch, and then Leander just, as a matter of fact, it's like, so what are you doing next week, So I was like, I'm just heading back to India, my flight, whatever. Like, maybe, do you want to come with us to New Zealand next week? I was like, what do you mean? He was like, yeah, well, I'd like you to come there as a 5th reserve player, and I think it would be great for you. I was like, and I looked at my dad, and so Leander had already spoken to my dad. And so my dad already knew, and he didn't tell me because he wanted me to focus on the tournament. So then I was like, yeah, man, I was super excited. I literally rushed within a day. We went to Sydney to get my visa because I didn't have a visa for New Zealand. Luckily got my visa in a day or 2, and then I took the next flight to New Zealand to be part of the team. And yeah, so that was, I was 17 at the time. So just to be part of that team at that age, at Leander, Mahesh, they were both there, So to be around those guys at that age for me was like, after making the semis of Australian Open, it was the best 2 weeks of my life.
Yeah, it's true. And it's also very motivating, right? You do well, and then it's recognized immediately. it normally doesn't happen that way, right? So
Yeah,
that's
exactly. I
great.
mean, in a way, I guess maybe I was lucky because they were playing New Zealand away right after. So from Australia to New Zealand was right there. So if that tie would have been somewhere else, maybe I wouldn't have
Yeah.
gotten the call. So in a way, I was lucky to get there.
And also you got initiated by Dr. Pay. So
Oh,
everything put
yeah,
together is a great
that
story.
was another experience. Yeah, Dr. Pace and his initiations are quite legendary.
So did you pick up, and I know you also do a lot of pranks. So did you pick that up from Dr. Pace or you already like that?
No.
I know about
Quite a simple.
harmless,
I'm
but
harmless. I'm harmless.
I know about how you offered Wilson contract to Isha in Malaysia.
Oh, I don't remember this story.
Yeah, you called her and you said it's Lim speaking, and you spoke to her and had a Wilson contract, and she was super excited. And then later she got to know it was Lim
Yeah.
Karan
I think
on the other
there was
line.
other somebody. Arun Prakash was with me. I don't remember who else was with me, but yeah. Isha, we had some fun with Isha back in the days. Yeah, she was.
But
She
she
was
remembers it very fondly, though.
yeah. I'm sure she does. No. Isha was she was a lot of fun to travel with.
So, any
Lot of
other
stories with her.
pranks you can think of? I mean, you didn't remember this, but any other prank you can think of?
Um,
You pulled it off?
no, I don't think so. Like I said, maybe when I was younger, I must have done a little bit, but I was quite harmless. I think the Rohan and these guys are probably the more.
Yeah.
They were the ones who would take the more initiative. I would sort of follow them, and yeah, I
Yeah,
think he
Rohan
was asking
certainly, yeah.
about the Uzbek story. I think maybe we should. Yeah, I think
Rohan, I mean, cannot stop doing it. So,
yeah.
I don't know if it's a Pune influence, but Sandeep was listening in. So, Sandeep also is not too bad at all these things.
Yeah. I think maybe it is the Pune gang. Maybe they're the ones who initiated, and then the Bombay guys probably just follow them a little bit.
And Vishnu, I mean, Vishnu is, he is listening in. You played doubles and you won a tournament in Astana, and apparently you had a great celebration after that.
Oh yeah, that was fantastic. I think because the ambassador from the Indian ambassador came to watch us in the finals, and after the match, I think Vishnu tells the story really well. But I think after the match, I sort of invited ourselves to his house for dinner, like without really him asking us. So I think because we've been in Uzbek, Kazakh for like a month, so we were starving for any Indian food or just some sort of Indianness. And after the match, I was like, "Oh, so okay, we'll come to your house for dinner, or we'll meet you later for dinner, or something like that." And I think he was little surprised that I myself just initiated it, and I don't think he could say no. So he's like, "Yeah, okay, come for dinner." So then we went to his house for dinner, and I think his wife prepared a massive meal for us, and there was a bit of alcohol and everything. It was a fantastic celebration. It was both our first challenger title doubles.
Right.
So it was a great achievement for us, and we were both very happy and great. It was a great night, great celebration.
I think Jeevan wants to know if you can play doubles challenger with him.
Yeah, totally. I might not be able to do much, but I can still return and hit my backhand. So
No, he'll do the rest. I mean, you know how Jeevan is. No, he'll tell you do this, I do that. So he'll plan the whole point, and all you have to do is just stand in one corner and hit one ball.
But absolutely, that's more than enough. I'll just stay in the backhand corner and keep hitting backhands.
And Vishnu wants to know if you would be open to working in India and helping Indian players.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at some point, definitely. It's always been, even when I first started coaching, it's always been my goal at some point to coach in India. For whatever reason, it hasn't happened yet. But if there's the right opportunity, if things work out, then why not?
Okay, a lot of guys rank does not necessarily. Okay, one of the tennis kids' parents, he wants to know, you were ranked 1 in under 12 to 18. People say it's not necessary to be a top junior to succeed as a professional player. So, what's your take, Karan? I mean, early success in juniors, does it help or not really?
Maybe a little bit, but it's not. It's not the end of. It doesn't guarantee you success. In the men's or the women's circuit. I mean, it helps in a way. It'll give you a little bit of confidence. It'll maybe get you noticed a little bit. But there's many examples of top players who haven't done well in the juniors and who ended up being really, really good in the pros. Perfect examples are guys like Djokovic. Djokovic wasn't ranked in the ITF juniors. He didn't play that many junior tournaments. Nadal, to an extent. These are just some examples. Pete Sampras, for an example, wasn't a great junior. So juniors should, honestly, in my opinion, juniors, that time is just to develop your game, to get physically strong, to prepare yourself for what's coming ahead after 18, 19, 20. Because that's one thing I realized, because I was a very good junior and I got to about 300 very quickly. So I was, I think, still at 19 and I was already 320, 330. But then to make the jump from there to the top 100 was very, very difficult because I hadn't prepared myself the right way in my junior career. If I had maybe sacrificed my ranking a little bit and those kind of things and prepared myself in a better way, maybe I could have gone to a higher ranking. But so at the end of the day, I think juniors' ranking honestly doesn't really matter at all.
So, like talking about yourself, if one thing you had to change or do different as a junior, what would that be? Like you work on your physical part or some part of your game, like the technical side?
I think it's tough to pick one thing, but if I had to pick a couple things, physically, definitely yes. But saying that, I think when I was a junior growing up in India, we didn't have, firstly, there was no internet. So we didn't have knowledge and the ability to just find stuff for ourselves. I didn't have a fitness trainer for one when I was growing up. I would just, do whatever the tennis coaches told me or just a little bit here and there. I didn't have maybe expert guidance as to what I really needed to focus on. Obviously, my parents never really played professional sports, so they did whatever they could. But, at the end of the day, you need somebody maybe like yourself or somebody who's actually been there who to tell you, okay, this is what you need to work on. This is how you need to get better. Because sometimes you get caught up in that race or, you think your ranking is good and you think, oh, you're doing everything great. But an actual good coach who's been there will actually tell you, okay, your ranking doesn't matter. But so I wish I really worked maybe on my physical part and maybe worked on my technical ability a little bit more rather than just focusing on winning matches.
Oh, okay. And actually, as you're talking, I think Vishnu, Jeevan, and Rohan are particular that you tell the true Uzbek story.
Oh my God! My parents are watching.
Actually, you're not going to say that, but I'll still put it out there.
my parents are watching. I don't think they'll be too happy to know.
And you're a coach now, so a lot of kids also will be watching or listening.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to be careful.
Yeah, a lot of kids. The short version is that we went out one night and we got into a bit of trouble coming back, and a few things happened. But
Vishnu would have contributed for the trouble?
No, Vishnu actually wasn't there. It was it was Rohan Gajjar, Ranjit, myself, and Roman Jabavi, a Czech player. So it was four of us, and then we went out and got into a bit of trouble. So that's the PG version I'll stick to over here.
And interesting, Jeevan is mentioning about backhand. He says all Maharashtra players have good backhand. Is there what is the key to secret to that?
I don't know. It's an interesting observation because he's right. I mean, Harsh had a great backhand. Obviously, I had a better backhand. Purav has a great backhand. So that's three of us right there. Sandeep. Yeah, Maharashtra. Yeah, Sandeep has a fantastic backhand.
Okay, we can't talk about Nitin. We'll talk about Sandeep.
Yeah.
In terms of backhand.
Yeah, exactly. But honestly, I don't know what it is. I mean, I wish I could pinpoint one thing. Maybe the coaching, or I guess Purav is saying the courts are sloped. Maybe that's probably what it is. But I don't know. I don't know what it is. But yeah, we definitely had pretty good backhands.
It is interesting. Jeevan asked that question.
Jeevan's the master of running around his backhand.
Yeah, he doesn't need a backhand. He'll just play forehands. And do you still write blogs? I mean, you used to write blogs, right? You still write?
Yeah, I used to, but not anymore. I mean, now I just don't know if I have the time. Obviously busy. When I used to write them, I think I was still in India. I was still single. I was still, I just had a little more time. Now with the family and obviously with the job, it's 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 a little hard. But I mean, at some point, I wish I would like to write a little more. I just need to maybe once my daughter starts going to school, I might have a little bit more time at home. But we'll see. We'll see. It's I like writing. I definitely have a few people close to me say, "Oh, I should write a little more." But we'll see. Hopefully, at some point, I might.
Actually, the blog you wrote was quite interesting, and it's a nice, interesting read. I mean, you have a good flow and a flair
Right.
to it. It
Right. Yeah.
keeps the reader pretty involved in the
Yeah.
what you
So
write.
yeah. So hopefully, I mean, at some point, I would like to get back to it. Let's see when.
And one of the listeners have asked in any advice for juniors to avoid getting injured.
Um,
So,
the biggest advice I would give is try to work on your fitness a little bit more. So injury is not only about it's not only about curing it or preventing it, it's also about getting stronger. So when you're younger, if you start working on getting stronger and doing things technically right, then the less chances of you getting injured. A lot of injuries, especially in the junior days, happen because maybe your technique isn't right or you're doing certain exercises wrong. Some people get caught up in working too hard and then forgetting about the technique of the actual exercise, or forgetting about working smart. So I think it's about working smart, getting stronger, and making sure you're doing all your recovery and you're taking care of the off-court stuff. Because even now you see a lot of juniors, back in the day as well, they'll do a couple of things here and there and get on court and start hitting, or after hitting they'll just do one stretch here and there and then go home. They don't pay as much attention to all these kind of things. So I think just making that as important as what you do on court will probably help you, prevent injuries when you get older.
so the quality of training rather than just focusing on the quantity of work, right?
Exactly. You rather do a high intense session for 45 minutes than do something, where you're fooling around for a couple hours. So.
And when you had Sanjay Podar working with you for a long period of your career, right?
Yeah.
You want to say a few words of how he contributed and how he helped you in your career?
Oh yeah, Sanjay sir was fantastic. I mean, he first worked with me when I was younger. So he worked at track tennis when I was younger. So that's where I first met him. He was, I think, maybe when I was 8, 9. I don't remember the exact age, but he was there, and we always got along. I think his attitude, and he was motivated, very sincere, very honest. These are fantastic qualities. So later on, when I turned pro, I think I was maybe 18 or 19 at the time. I think I was 18, and I met him at a tournament, and after a long time. So like, oh, how's everything going? But he the biggest thing about him was he was always straight with you. He was always direct. He would never beat around the bush. If he thought that you weren't working hard enough, he would tell you right away. He would never try to protect your feelings or anything like that. So I always felt that I could rely on him to be honest with me. And I think as he got me into a lot of things that maybe I wasn't into when I was younger, like yoga and all these kind of things. So I think he really changed my maybe until I got hurt. I think the discipline I had, maybe that's one thing I probably was good at. I was very disciplined, tried to be very focused, do everything right. And I think he was the driving force behind that. I think in a way, I wasn't scared of him, but I was scared of disappointing him or scared of, you know, um, making him think that I wasn't working hard enough. So I think
And
he made a big difference.
and after Sanjay, it was Mark Sophilis, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how like I think he was working with you towards then. We met at Chennai Open once, so
Yes.
you introduced me to him. He came across
Yes.
as a nice guy, but I didn't have much interaction. So, how did you, meet Mark, and how did that happen?
Yeah. So I met Mark in Melbourne. That's where I got my back surgery. So the physio I was working with knew Mark. So he just spoke to Mark, hey, you know what? This guy's here. He's trying to get back. Just come in, just spend some time with him and see how it goes. And, we worked a little bit together and we clicked right away. I think our chemistry was great. He was a young guy. So, we got along really well. We could joke about different things. And as far as the tennis stuff was concerned, I think he brought a different perspective to my game. I think he really worked on maybe developing the other sides of my game, which maybe I had neglected, like coming to the net a little more, developing the slice. a little bit more, just adding a bit more variety. And I think tactically he helped me immensely. Because maybe before that, I wasn't a very tactically smart player. I would just play one style of a game, just run and hope, hope for the best kind of thing. But I think with him, then he made me think about the game a little bit more, try to analyze things a little more, and that really helped me win a lot more matches. It made me think very differently on the court. So I think that's when I got to my highest ranking after my surgery, working with him, and he was a big part of that. So I really felt that I felt a more complete player after working with him.
Oh, okay. Talking about matches and style of play, amongst your contemporaries in Indian among the Indian players, who was the toughest player you played, and any particular match you remember, which is like always in your mind?
The toughest player I played. I think they were all tough. I mean, I remember not liking a couple players, not liking playing against a couple players. I think Purav was definitely one player I hated to play against. I think everybody knows that Purav, his game style, and because we've known each other also for a very long time. My first memory of a tennis match is against Purav when I was 8 years old in prac tennis. And when we got older, he came back from England and college and everything, and we would still practice together every day. So he knew me inside out. He knew my weaknesses, he knew my strengths, and his game style it didn't suit me at all. So that was one player I remember. I think I hated to play against. We're very good friends, a very, very, very nice guy, but I mean on the court, I absolutely hated it.
He plays so easy, so it's kind of annoying, when you're working so hard and
Exactly.
running
Yeah.
around,
Just
you
no
just playing
rhythm.
like this.
Yeah, no rhythm. You start stepping in on my second serve on the service line, and like really get into my head, and I hated that. I hated that stuff. And he had a very good backhand too, so he had great hands. So he would move me around a little bit. So yeah, it was a tough matchup for me.
And during junior days, you had a deal. I mean, you had an IMG offer, and you used to train there. Like, how was the training routine there in IMG? I mean, how different was it compared to what you are doing already?
It was very, very different. Best example I can give you is the first time I went there, I was hitting with Monica Seles. And so the level of people I was training with was very different. The environment I was in was very different. There, you were literally on the next court, you would have Tommy Haas, Xavier Malisse, Max Mirny, all these guys training. And when I got older, so I got to hit with them. I would be when I was younger, I would be hitting with Serena, Sharapova, all these girls. So the entire environment, you can imagine, with all of them training there was no messing around. Coming from India, who's never really trained abroad, never seen anything, it was like, what is going on? I felt so out of place. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. And then gradually, the more time I spent there, I got comfortable. But even stuff like going into the gym with them, I was always the least coordinated. Even though I felt in India, I was probably one of the fitter guys in the juniors. But going there, I just felt that I had no idea what I was doing in the gym. Everybody else was just so far ahead of me that it opened my eyes up to, what I was doing wrong and what I should have been doing. So it was a completely different way of training, and it just showed me that how far back I was.
And you're talking about different atmosphere. I think you are sharing a room with like Nishikori and Gasquet, and they were already established when you were
Yeah, so
with
I
them?
think Nishikori, when I was about, I don't know, about maybe 16, 17, or maybe 15 at the time. I think he's 3 years younger to me. So we all would room together, and we would all be practicing together every time. So even at that time, you could see that he already had Sony as a sponsor. So it was
Okay.
funny because Sony would then give him all these PlayStations and all these things to, just keep in the room. So obviously we'd be sharing the room with him, so we could use all his stuff because he'd have so much, and he'd just be like, yeah, do what you want with it. So we'd all enjoyed that. But then when it came to training on court, you could just see that he had something special. He was so quick, so agile. And even at that young age, I remember very clearly, he had a team around him. So he already had his own coach. He had his own fitness trainer. He had a physio who would look after him. This is at 13, 14 years old. Now,
And a sponsor.
and a sponsor. So imagine the kind of support and the kind of professionalism that someone's going through at that age. In India, we don't get that. Even when we're like, our top players are still trying to find a full team and trying to get sponsors, you know. So imagine the difference.
Yeah. And talking about keeping PlayStation in the room, do you keep heaters in the room still, or you stop?
No. I'm very particular. I am very particular about heaters. So my wife she brings it because in Hong Kong it gets a little cold. So she brought a portable little heater. So the minute she bought it, I was like, I'm staying away from that. Like, you're gonna handle that. I'm not gonna touch anything. I'm not gonna get near that. Like, so I've had very bad experiences with heaters.
And something to do with fire, right? I mean, somehow it follows
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I don't know what it is with me and fire. I've burned 2 rooms down in my playing days, and yeah, yeah,
You want to briefly touch on that? I don't know many people listening in know this your relationship with fire.
yeah. Yes. There's two stories. The first one was, I think I was 15 or 16 at the time. I don't remember. We were playing a junior tournament in Thailand. And I don't know, 3 of us sharing a room. I think it was Nihal Advani, me, and maybe one more boy. I don't remember. And we're trying to go to sleep, and we're trying to put the lights off in the bedroom. And there was one particular light that we couldn't find the switch. It wasn't going off. Now maybe we didn't look hard enough. I don't know. But we're trying to find this. And now I'll take the blame for it. But the other two weren't smart enough either, because they were sharing the room with me. They could have easily said, "Don't do it." So I was like, you know what, we can't put the light off. Let's just put a towel on the light, and it'll cover the light. It'll be dark. Oh my God! At like 2 in the morning, we hear massive banging on our door, and we're like 15, 16-year-old kids in Bangkok now. You know, we're scared. Like, what is going on? So suddenly, I open the door, and the room service guys, these 3 Thai men, barge into our door, and suddenly we look over, and that obviously it's caught fire. The tower on the light. So like, these guys, the fire alarm is going off, and we were sleeping through all of this. We woke up only when they started banging the door. Luckily, they put the fire out, and I had to pay next day for the damage and everything, or it was embarrassing. But
No, I mean, in a way, it's also like, you're a little bit fortunate that the fire wasn't too big and engulfed the room. It could have been
yes. So
dangerous.
they
You
came
guys were
in
sleeping.
luckily in time. They came in luckily in time before it got too bad. But the second time was a lot worse. The second time
Yeah.
was 10 times worse. That was in DLTA actually, yeah, at AITA. So I mean, obviously everybody knows DLTA. We've been staying there since we were kids. You know, in those back rooms under the stadium, the small little rooms. You know, and I still remember the room number was 113. And,
Oh, okay.
And so I was at the Grass Court Nationals. I think that was the tournament I was playing in the winter. And Sanjay Sir was with me. So Sanjay Sir went to do something, and he went to pick up somebody at the airport. And I went for dinner by myself. And when I came back, so the staff, the lobby, they're like, "Oh, aapke room mein there's fire in your room." So I was like, "Fire? Must be a little bit. Okay, I'll go and check."
I have seen it before.
Oh my God. I went up, lift opened, and there were like 10 people outside my room. So I'm like, what is going on? I went into my room, and it was just black. Like, the entire room was in ashes. So apparently I had left the heater on, and the heater was one of the small little heaters on the floor. And you know, the carpet in that DLTA room was horrible, coming out, everything. So the heater caught onto the carpet or something, and then the whole thing caught fire. Oh, it was all. And the worst part was, I remember I was playing next day. I had a match the next day. Luckily, my grass court shoes and my tennis rackets were safe somehow. They were on the other side of the room. They were safe, and my passport had gone for my Australian visa.
Oh,
So that was not in my room. So that was safe.
I imagine
But
passport burnt.
oh my God. But I had, because I was going to Doha the next week, so I had like $1,000, a bunch of stuff in my bag, all gone. Like, just completely damaged. Luckily, I borrowed clothes from Purav. Actually, Purav was there. I borrowed clothes from Purav for the next day and managed to play my match. But yeah, it was a harrowing experience. It was very scary. Yeah.
Now, moving on to some little bit serious topic. The 2004 was a great year for you, right? Because you reached semis, juniors. Then that's the year you went from, your ranking went to 350 in ATP.
2005, I went to 350 in the
350.
ATP. Yeah.
The end of 2004, beginning of 2005.
Yeah.
So can you talk through that year 2004? Must have been a very eventful year, right? Because starting with the Australian Open, everything must have gone pretty much.
Yeah. 2004 started off very well. Obviously, I was out the time I was ranked number 4 in the world, I think, in juniors.
Juniors, yeah.
So obviously, I was seeded number 4 at the Australian Open, and going into it with full confidence. Ended up making the semis, losing to Monfield. So obviously, started off the year very well. Felt very good about my game, and then at that point, I felt personally, I think I made a mistake where maybe at that point I tried to think a little bit of trying to maintain that junior ranking, tried to stay in the top 10 a little bit. And my selection of tournaments I felt at the time was a little wrong. I should have maybe played a few more futures or maybe spent some more time away from India, developing my personality and my game and all these kind of things. But I remember I played 4 tournaments, those grade ones in Asia at the time, where I was the number 1 seed, and I didn't do very well. Because right? Like if you spend too much time at one level, you sort of get used to that. So I sort of got comfortable in that environment a little bit, and so I felt that really hampered the rest of my junior career for that year. So after that, then I didn't have very good results in that junior year. I ended up finishing the year outside the top 20 or something like that. So I dropped quite a bit. So that's one mistake I clearly remember that maybe I should have done something differently. I do remember at that point also my back started flaring up again a little bit. So I had to take a month off. So all these things contributed to not having a great year in the juniors after that. And then I remember 2004 towards the end, I went to the IMG Academy, spent some time there, and got myself back in shape, got my head right, and then came back. And I think that was the year they had an ABN AMRO tennis challenge or one of these tournaments where they had the top 8 men play for a wild card into the Rotterdam event. And I was a wild card entry into that as a junior because I had never played really men's. And I ended up winning that event, beating some really good players, Vishal Uppal and all these guys who were really senior to me, Sunil Kumar. And then that gave me massive confidence. So that, I think, then changed my form or my perception of myself a little bit. That, I can compete with the men a little bit. I'm no more a junior. Gave me a lot of confidence. And then I remember we played a satellite. They had satellites at the time. We played a satellite in NTA, Gurgaon. We spent 3 weeks in that, got for second place, and I couldn't qualify for the Masters. I think I lost to Vijay Kannan or something in the final, in the 3rd week. But then, cut to 1 year later, the same satellite event, I ended up winning the entire thing. So exactly 1 year after that, I was 19, and I ended up winning the whole thing, beat some really good players, and then that helped me get my ranking to 350 or whatever it was at the time. So that 1 year, it transformed me, I think. Started playing the future, started traveling abroad a lot more, opened my eyes up, my personality. Sanjay Sir was with me at the time. So I had somebody with me who knew the game, who could help me understand different things. I was learning about myself at that time as well. So I think that 1 year helped me, get over that one poor year in the juniors.
Because the juniors to men's, a lot of new things, and you're completely a different person, right? On and off the court.
Exactly. I was discovering so many different things that I didn't know about myself, about my game, about how to even. And I was generally, when I was a junior, I was a very shy, very reserved person. I was never one to go out and talk to people. I was always in my own little world. So it opened me up just a little bit.
And like couple of years down the line, so 2005, so 2007 Chennai Open, I think, that's the year you played Nadal. He was, I think, world number 2, right, coming into the tournament?
Yeah. So I think,
So
2007.
When you played him in Chennai Open, after having played him in the 14s, how different was it? Obviously, there is difference, but from your perspective, how different was it?
Honestly, I didn't think of it that much at the time. Because obviously when I played him in the under 14s, it was very, very different. you couldn't compare at that time how things were different compared to what he is now. He'd already won a couple French Opens. You know this guy was one of the best players in the world. So I was coming into the tournament with feeling good because I played a futures event the week before in Delhi, which I'd won.
Yeah.
So I ended up winning that tournament, and so I was already full of confidence, playing well. Coming into and I remember a Brazilian guy, Thiago Alves, who was top 100 at the time, played him in the first round. And and I remember I was up 6-3, 4-1, something like that in that match. And then he came back to 4-all. And I remember very particularly during that match, you could hear what was happening on center court. Because center court, Nadal was playing, and I was playing on the outside court. And I knew that if I win, I get to play him. So I could hear what is going on. And I realized,
in your mind.
yeah, so at 4-1, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to play Nadal in the next match. I started thinking about that, and before you know it, I'm 4-all, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a different ball game now. But luckily, I managed to pull through that match. And then I remember, obviously, after that, a couple of the journalists asked me, so what do you think? You're going to play Nadal? I'm like, I'm just super excited. I had nothing else to say. I mean, not every day at that point you get to play against somebody at that level. I was like, on the show court. My first, exactly. So I was super excited. In India, live on TV, Chennai Open, my entire family, all my friends watching. I was like, I just can't wait. And we had a day off. So the next day was off. And I remember IMG organized like a promotional event with Nadal, Chris Shrikant, the cricketer, and myself, where I was bowling to him, and Nadal was hitting with a cricket bat and all these kind of things. So that in a way helped me get over the fact that he was such a big player, because I was interacting with him and I was talking to him. Okay. And it sort of made me realize, okay, he's just another normal guy. It took away that fear factor, if you will. So that was really good. So I could go into the match a little freer and not so scared, And then, I remember when I went into there's another interesting part that day in the players' lounge, I think before the promotional event, Nadal didn't know who I was. So he was sitting in the players' lounge, and I was sitting right behind him on the couches. And him and his coaches were having this discussion on the computer, trying to look me up because they didn't know who I was. So they're talking about, I could hear in Spanish, they're saying my name and, these kind of things. So they're trying to find out more information basically about me. So, and that stood out because a guy who's number 2 in the world wants to know his opponent, even though he's ranked 350, 400 in the world. So he was not taking me lightly. He was not taking me for granted. He wanted to be as prepared as he could.
Yeah.
So that's an example. That's an example I use even now with some of the players I coach, that it doesn't matter. Like if a guy like him can
Karan, sorry, I had to interrupt you now. I'll save it and we'll rejoin again because we are running out of time. I need to save now and we'll rejoin again. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, you were talking about the different, like Chennai Open and the interesting story of how Nadal was looking up on you.
Yeah.
And then I think you were continuing, and when I interrupted, so you remember what you were talking about?
I think I was just basically talking about how he was scouting me and keeping an eye on what my results were. And that was just showed his humbleness, his humility, is to he didn't take anything for granted. And I remember the next day, we were all warming up, and before we went on to the match, in that players' locker room area in that at Nungambakkam Stadium. So he was warming up with his coach, and I was doing my whatever before going on. And he had his headphones on, and he was taking it so like it was the Wimbledon final or French Open final, And I just looked at that, and I was like, wow. I mean, this guy, he's playing against some Indian ranked 300 in the world, and the intensity and the focus and everything is still the same, So it's amazing. I mean, I don't think you'll find another Rafael Nadal. So, and it was interesting because after I finished the match, a couple months later, I went to play the Dubai ATP. I was in the qualies there, and that's Nadal was playing the same event. So Nadal himself came up to me and be like, hey, how's it going? And you want to practice and this and that. So I'm like, yeah, man, totally. I'm not going to say no to practice with you. So then we went and practiced, played a set, and his uncle Tony was there as well. So they spoke to me nicely, gave me a little advice and this and that. So it was very nice, very, very humble. The entire, Tony Nadal, him, they were very, and it just shows. Even now, you look at some of his interviews and stuff. It's very genuine. So it was very nice.
That's nice. Actually, I mean, such a great player and nice human being. I think that combination is deadly, right? You'll never
Absolutely.
forget meeting them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not it's very, very nice to see because it's not that common. Sometimes guys at that level can be a little not rude, but may don't give you the same amount of respect at the same time. So it was fantastic.
And okay, now going back to your playing career, I mean, after your injury, surgery, I mean, the recovery and your comeback was phenomenal. I mean, you came back to way into 280s. So the climb, was it what are the new challenges you faced? I mean, already you had gone through it, got to 350. Now you're redoing it again. I'm sure the challenges were different of sorts.
Oh yeah, I
So
mean, just to begin with, so the first year after I had the surgery, that was probably the hardest of my life. Just because I had the surgery in Melbourne and I could not fly back to India for about 4 months because I wasn't allowed to sit for more than 20 minutes. Because
okay.
the way the surgery was, they put screws into my spine to hold it
Okay.
together. So if I would sit, that would put pressure on the screws and then it would mess up what they've done. So I would sit for 10-15 minutes and I would have to get up and walk around. Sleeping as well, I could not turn by myself. I could not wear my shoes, my socks, my shorts by myself. So my mom was there with me the entire time. So without her, I wouldn't have been able to get through that. At night, I remember we would sleep, and then I would have to wake her up saying I want to turn. So she would then help me roll over to the side, stuff like that. So it was brutal. Those first 6 months, especially while I was in Melbourne, I was my mom and me. Luckily we had some family there, so they took us in, helped us out a lot. But it was very tough. And then coming back, then once I got back to India and I could still move around, I actually finished my high school then. Did my 12th standard exams because I had so much time now, so I figured I might as well finish this. And then gradually, as I got back to it, I remember I went to Delhi, played a doubles tournament, to see how it felt, and it felt okay. And then gradually, I started getting back into it. My first real tournament was the Futures in Pune, and I ended up winning a couple matches, making the quarters. And that's when I felt, what, okay, this can work. I can play. I didn't feel any pain, didn't feel anything, and I said, okay, you know what, let's start pushing it a little bit more. And so after that, then I started pushing it. Went through a bunch of like preseason, 3-4 weeks, really got in shape. And then when I started playing, I think in a way I felt less pressure maybe now than where I felt before I had the surgery. I felt I was enjoying it a lot more. Maybe because I appreciate it now that I lost for so long. I spent a year and a half looking at everybody else playing, all my contemporaries doing well, traveling, doing all that, and I'm just sitting at home. And it obviously it hurts. You feel bad even though you want to be out there with them competing. So I realized how much I actually missed it and how much I enjoyed being out there. So when I got back, I was like, you know what, this is this is what I want to do. This is what I enjoy doing, and I won't take it for granted anymore. So I felt I started absorbing things a lot better. Maybe before I was a little closed, a little more narrow-minded. I started listening to people a little bit more, trying to take in knowledge from as much as I could. And that really helped me on the court, off the court. I think I was I always look at my life in two parts: before surgery, after surgery. I think I was a different player and a different person after. But so it completely changed my way of thinking.
Even the surgery was not easy, right? I mean, you were told that it can cause some serious damage.
Yeah,
There was
yeah.
a possibility, and you had to take that risk.
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember very clearly when we were in Melbourne, the physio introduced us to two different surgeons. So to get two different opinions. So one of them said, you know what, okay, you will get it done, but it's going to take time. You have to be patient, but you will play again. So I was like, okay. So we went to another surgeon. The surgeon saw my report, saw everything within the first 2 minutes. He's like, if you get this, you're done. You won't play. You won't play. So I think you better. He basically told me point blank that I think it's better you try to find alternative career options. So I was like, let's go to the other guy. The other guy was a little more positive. Let's let's try to see what he has to say. So we went back to him, and obviously it worked. There's one thing though I felt after the surgery. There was my movement was a little restricted. I didn't have the same flexibility because of the screws, and my left leg had a bit of um, nerve issue, so that goes down from your back. So I had compared to my right leg, much less power in my left leg. So that was that, and that is with me even now. That has stayed since then. So that hampered my movement and my strength from my left leg a lot when I was playing. So that's why I always wore an ankle brace to help support that a little bit more. So these kind of things, you deal with, and then eventually you scrap, and I just competed. I tried to find a way to win, and I enjoyed it. I never complained. I always tried to work hard, try to do the right things, and complete no regrets.
And did you know why you got this back injury? Was there a specific reason for it, or it was just overused?
I mean, I don't know if there was a specific reason. It could be overused. I remember feeling it for the first time when I was 14, when I went for that World Junior tennis, the Asia leg. And then since I was 14, I would rest it a couple of weeks, do a bit of rehab. When you're at that time in India, you didn't have the physios or the knowledge or those kind of the stuff that you have now. So I literally, I remember I went to a doctor in Bombay, and I was really bad. So he's like, okay, rest for 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, do swimming and do cycling, and you'll be fine. And I'm like, okay, whatever you say, boss. So
Good.
good advice. So I did that, and I was fine. But then obviously a couple years later, then it flared up again. It never really went away. So I wish I had maybe the access to the physios that we have now, maybe back then, or maybe just even the internet to see for myself maybe what's out there,
More
how I
information.
can
You
exactly,
could have got more
so
information and sourced that.
exactly. So but it was what it was at that point, and eventually it got to a point. I remember playing a futures in Kuwait, and I was getting ready for my semis the next day. I'd won the quarters, and we went out for dinner, and I couldn't walk. Like it had just my body just broke down. It was telling
The
me
last
that you've
nail,
had enough.
basically.
That was the last day. I was limping at dinner, and next day, obviously, I retired, came back home. I remember speaking to Mahesh because Mahesh went through a back surgery, so he
Yeah.
suggested speak to this physio Amir in Melbourne
Yeah.
and see what he can do. So then I spoke to him, and then he said, "Okay, come over." And then so Mahesh helped me a lot that time. So helped me get in touch with the physio and everything, and that's how we sort of went to Melbourne. But it was a rough couple years there.
So by the time, when you were deciding to stop, basically, you couldn't handle it anymore with the injury issues, right? Something was coming up, and mentally you were worn down more than the physical part.
Yeah. I mean, I was, especially before the surgery, I was then, even when I quit, eventually when I quit, because of that nerve thing down my leg, my knee started hurting because that was compensating for the lack of
Compensating,
strength.
yeah.
Exactly. So, and at that point, I was like, I'd actually, honestly, not many people know this, but I had actually decided to quit a year earlier. So a year
Okay.
earlier, before I actually quit, I had spoken to my coach Mark and my parents saying, you know what, I'm not enjoying this. I'm done. I feel like I've got nothing more to give. And let's But then obviously, I actually went to work with my dad because my dad used to run a business in Bombay. So I was
Yeah.
like, you know what, I'll go to work with you, and we'll see how that goes. So I went to the factory with him, and for a couple of weeks, went to work, and I don't think I enjoyed that too much. So then eventually then my coach and my dad, and then I felt, okay, you know what, let's try again. So I think I was out for a couple months at the time, and then I came back and did really well again, and for a year I kept it going, was motivated, but then eventually, it just, there was, if you're playing tennis, you want to be at the top 100, you want to be playing Grand Slams, you want to be doing that. And I realized at that point, with what I had and with the way I was, doubles I started winning challengers and stuff in doubles. So maybe doubles I could have played, but I didn't want to do that. I knew that would have cost money to travel like these guys travel. It's expensive.
Yeah, and those
So
days,
I
I
said,
think the double didn't have this kind of money, right? I mean, you're talking about
exactly. You didn't have,
8 years ago.
exactly. So, and my parents had helped me enough. My dad had, done a lot for me financially. So I was like, enough. You guys live your life. I'll find my way. I'll coach. I'll do whatever. But I think I've had enough. So, it was a decision that I was happy to make eventually.
So actually, Purav has just come up with a suggestion. Maybe you should have played like him, not run so much, and you wouldn't have hurt yourself.
Yeah. Only Purav can do that. I don't think we can. Yeah. We other normal players can do what he does.
And actually, when you decide to stop, deciding to stop would have been an easier choice. But how did you decide that you want to do coaching and not go into, because a lot of players leave and then they get into business or some other work. But you already had it clear that you want to get into coaching.
Yeah,
how did that decision come about?
Well, I think it was. I mean, when I was sort of towards the end of my playing career, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Obviously the option with going with my dad and working in his business and doing that was always there. But I felt that that's not going to go anywhere. I still enjoyed the sport. I still liked being around tennis. Even though my body probably couldn't keep up, but mentally I was still as motivated as ever. Maybe, I wanted to still be around the sport. So I remember having a discussion with my dad the first time I had quit, so the year before. And I was like, oh, I'll come to work with you. He's like, well, maybe you can coach. So it was his suggestion that, oh, maybe you should, help some players out and coach. So I was like, oh, we'll see, I don't know. I wasn't too convinced. But then a year later, I remember I was okay with the idea. So I still remember very clearly. I was playing my last tournament. I was playing a futures in Manipal, one of those, I think in Karnataka somewhere. And my shoulder was hurting a little bit. And, I was a little injured, and I was playing. I think I played Siddharth Rawat in the quarters or the second round, and and I wasn't playing great. Motivation was probably off. Physically, I didn't feel great, and I think I lost in 3 sets or something like that. And midway through the match, I made up my mind that I was done. So midway through that match, I realized that what, this is my last match. This is my last match. I'm not feeling good. I'm not enjoying it anymore. I don't, this is not worth it. So finished that match, and literally right after the match, I remember there was a player from Bombay called Shahbaz Khan, who I used to hit with a little bit when I was in Bombay, and he was at the tournament. So I finished my match, got my prize money, and I went. I think we met at the hotel or something like that. And I told him straight up, look, I'm done. Don't tell anybody. I'm going to go back to Bombay and I'm going to start coaching. If you need any help while I'm there, let me know. And that was it. And he's like, yeah, totally. So I went back to Bombay the next day. Within a couple of days, he called me. We started working together. So it's not like I stopped, took a break for a month and started coaching. The next day, I was back on court, hitting with him and coaching and helping him. So I was just happy to be on court and, do that. So that's how it started.
That's good. Good you are in coaching and still connected with the sport.
Yeah.
And you're able to contribute. So how did you get to Hong Kong? How did that offer come about?
So I was coaching, like I said, I was coaching in Bombay for a bit. And then I was sort of looking what options I had, where I could go, what I could do. At that time, there was nothing really concrete coming up in Bombay or India for me. So I got an email from the Hong Kong Federation saying, would you be interested in coming over for a few months or something like that and, helping some of the players out. So I was like, why not? So initially I went for a couple of weeks. I went for just 2 weeks to meet the people here and see the players and all those kind of things, and see how things would work out. And then 2 weeks, they sort of liked what I had to say. I was sort of impressed with the vision maybe that they had, or what they wanted me to do. And so I signed a contract for a year initially, 10 months. That was the initial contract. And so I started here, I think, end of October, November 2012. That's when I moved here. And it was a 10-month thing, and now 10 months has become almost 8 years. So, yeah, so that's how that came about.
Initially, you were coaching all the junior team and the Davis Cup team and the Fed team, because you are, I think, handling all the teams, right?
Yeah, so initially they pretty much used me for everything. I mean, I was initially, I remember I was the coach for the Fed Cup team for a year or two. Then I was the coach for the Davis Cup team for a couple of years. Then for 2-3 years in the middle, I was doing all the junior teams. So your Junior Davis Cup, World Junior Tennis, all those teams. And then later on, for a year in the middle, I was in charge of the under-12 group. So all your best under-12s in Hong Kong, I was the head coach there, running that program. And then after that, when I finished with that, so what they did was there were the top 2 women in Hong Kong. One of them came back from college and wanted to turn pro. And the other one was coming back from an injury, and she was ranked about 180. So they were looking for somebody to work with the 2 of them, and I had known them from before, worked with them a little bit while I was in Hong Kong, and we got along really well. Very good chemistry, great relationship. So we then we decided, I'll work with them. And then since then, I've been working with the 2 of them. This is about year and a half, maybe now, year and a half, almost 2 years maybe. So since then, I've been basically in charge of these 2 women. They are our top 2 women players. So then naturally, Fed Cup, it was natural for me to make that transition. So I'm eligible, luckily, because I played Davis Cup for Hong Kong. So I could be the Fed Cup captain. So then the last 2 years, that's pretty much what my main responsibilities have been.
You mentioned you're working with 2 girls. Again, the obvious question will be, how different is it working with the girls compared to the boys?
Oh, very, very different. Very different. I think you've got to be, like you said, like I think Sydney told you, that I was a lot nicer to the girls than I was to the boys. So I think with the girls, you've got to have maybe a softer touch or a softer approach sometimes. Again, it depends on the girls. I'm sure a lot of Russian girls, if you're soft with them, then they eat you for breakfast. So you've got to find that comfort level maybe with them, and know when to be tough and when to give them explain things to them a little more nicely. For sure, when I was working with the men, I was definitely a lot tougher, a lot harder, because I know the men could take it. I could tell them straight up certain things, and I know they would understand and they would respond to it. Whereas with the women, to get them to respond, you've got to maybe work a little differently.
Also for men, since it comes from you, it's easier for them because you've been there, done it, seen it. Exactly. You know what you're talking about, so they can't really
question.
You also know the limit.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest difference. I mean, and it's fine. It's just the way it is. You have to adapt to certain players, to certain situations. Not everybody is the same, So it's a whole learning experience. I mean, for me, that's the biggest thing. Even now, I'm learning every day. Even from the girls that I'm coaching, I'm learning things from them every day. So I'm always trying to find ways to get them better and improve my knowledge and the way I work. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. For a coach, if you don't learn from the player, the coach doesn't progress. The coach has to.
Absolutely. You're listening more than talking, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. So in the midst of all this, you played Davis Cup, right, for Hong Kong. So in midst of all your coaching, you managed to find that also. How did that happen?
It was interesting because so normally Hong Kong, because the way the city is governed, I think ITF had a rule where if you spent 3 years or something, then you can get eligible to play for Hong Kong. Okay. So when my 3 years were about to finish, the federation basically asked me, look, you're still in shape, you can still play. Would you be interested? So I was like, yeah, why not? I mean, I don't see any reason. If I can get myself back in shape, if I can, feel like I'm not going to get injured and contribute, then definitely. So I worked I would actually train in the mornings before my coaching hours, like maybe 7 to 9 or something like that, and then go coach the whole day. And so I worked hard, got myself back in shape, and then got to play. Luckily, we did well. We got promoted to Group Two, and even in Group Two, we beat Vietnam. I won a doubles in 4 sets and won a singles in 4 sets the next day, to cement our place in Group Two. So that was a nice moment. So yeah, I enjoyed it because all the guys on the Davis Cup team were guys I coached, so I know them like inside out, anyways. So it was interesting to find that balance, maybe of being a teammate and a coach. I couldn't be both. So it was nice to be one of the guys for a change and not, be part of the group a little bit. Because as a coach, you have to be a little, you have to have that authority a little bit. So it was great fun to train with them, and we pushed each other, and yeah, it was a great experience.
Like I was talking to Manoj the other day, Manoj Vaidya. He said you always played for Maharashtra. You are like, one of those players who, given a chance to play for the state, you always played. You bring the same philosophy to your team now, to your Hong Kong players?
Sorry, I didn't get that last part.
You bring the same philosophy towards your players now? Like, given a chance, they always play, represent the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially with Hong Kong, it's because it's one city. Everybody sort of knows everyone. Everyone's very close together. It's not like India. One is in Delhi, the other one's in Chennai. We're all training together every time. So everyone's close together. It's a good atmosphere. It's a good team spirit between everybody. So I think that's something I've always believed in, that like for Maharashtra, I remember I've always I feel proud to be from Maharashtra. I'm very patriotic about India, about Bombay, about my roots. So I try to tell them the same thing here, that, this is your home. It's 1 week or 2 weeks in a year that you've got to represent your country. And even then, representing your country, not how many people can say that they've played Davis Cup or Fed Cup for India or for Hong Kong. There's a handful of people.
Playing for the country, it's a different feel, right? When you play for the country.
Exactly. It's completely different, and it's something you've got to be grateful for, and you've got to be very, very, you've got to cherish those moments a little more. So I remember even, I think it was the last Asian Games, we did really well with the girls here, and it was a great team atmosphere, great team spirit. Everyone was pushing each other on, and the best thing about it is tennis is an individual sport, so you don't get that team environment that often. So when you get it, then you enjoy it a lot more, because it doesn't happen every week. You're by yourself in some country, by yourself in some corner trying to win matches. So it's nice to be part of a team.
So you've been in Hong Kong for a while now. So compared to you've been, of course, you played in India. You knew how the Indian system worked. How different is it in Hong Kong now? The XK Hong Kong Association, the structure in this country, and the tennis ecosystem overall.
It's very different. So Hong Kong is based loosely on how Australia used to be with the Australian Institute of Sports, AIS, and Tennis Australia. So you have two organizations. So Hong Kong is similar to that. You have the Hong Kong Institute of Sports and the Hong Kong Tennis Federation. They're two separate organizations. So the Institute of Sports basically provides the facilities, the training, the coaching for all sports in Hong Kong, all the national teams. So that's where we're based. But I'm employed by the federation.
Okay.
So I'm employed by them, but then based at the institute. So the institute is only for the elite athletes, your top of the top, whereas the association then looks after all the other athletes. So everybody who's not in the top 2 or 3 in the men, women, under 18s, or the top age groups, the federation then has different centers in different locations in Hong Kong, and they have coaches, they hire coaches, and they look after them, all those different centers. They organize the tournaments, they do all that, but the elite athletes are then training separately at the institute. So that's the way the system here works. And then the institute then provides funding, the players here get so much. It's amazing. They have free training, free travel, free coaching, physios, everything at the institute, recovery, whatever you name it. Plus, they get a monthly salary here. So the top players, they get a monthly salary, monthly stipend, bonuses if they perform well. I wish I played for Hong Kong honestly when I was a junior, because it's amazing the stuff that the players get here.
Yeah, thanks, Karan. I know it's getting late for you. Well, just a couple of last questions.
Sure, sure.
Like, now that you spoke so much and, you're very patriotic about India, and Puro mentioned that you're the future Davis Cup coach for India. So, what I would like to ask is, given an opportunity to, you have an opening in India right now, will you be keen to move to India?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like I said, at some point, definitely. I mean, there were a couple, maybe, instances I could have in the past, but for whatever reason, it didn't happen. The good thing personally is I'm now a permanent resident in Hong Kong, so it gives me a little more flexibility to leave and come back whenever I want to.
Yeah.
So I just got that this year, January. So I finished that. That was a big milestone. So now it makes things a little easier if I do want to move to India or anywhere else. But like I said, of course, at some point, my whole family is in India. My friends are in India. I am from there, So obviously, you want to be part of that system. I'm still friends and in touch with all the guys who play, who used to play with me. So it's obviously at some point definitely, but it has to be the right opportunity. It has to be something that I enjoy, and something that I feel like I can contribute towards, and not just it's something if I don't enjoy it, it'd be very difficult for me to put everything into it.
Since Somdev is listening into the chat, I'll ask you a direct question. If AIT offers you a role, will you take it?
That's that depends on who in AITA, what the role is. If Somdev offers me, I'll take it, but depends on who is behind it. Like there's a lot of different aspects to it. I wish it was that simple.
Yeah, so sorry, Karan, to ask that uncomfortable question, but anyway, thank you so much for taking time and staying up late to talk to us, and all the very best to you in your coaching and all your future plans, and regards to Leah and Nisha as well. So thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you so much.
Take care,
All the
Karan.
best.
We'll meet soon.
Take care.